Pull up a chair, and I'll talk with you of film and animation, both old and new. Many to choose, many to see, but some I've yet to peruse. There's so much to see in this great world of ours, be they classics homegrown or gems from afar. So join me, friend, and I'll show to you films and animation, both old and new. So much to see, so let's start the show. Sit back, enjoy yourself. The show can't watch itself. Let's bring one down from the shelf. I don't think I made that great of a choice as to what to review for this first episode. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against Go Nagai. I understand that a lot of his work influenced the manga and anime industry into what we know it as today, especially with more influential series like Mazinger Z and Cutie Honey. However, any complaints that could be rectified by reading the manga are thrown completely out the window because TMS, Tokyo Movie Shinsha, I think that's what it stands for, feel free to correct me. Anyway, the studio that adapted this into an anime decided to tell their own story completely separate from the manga, save for two, well, more 1.5 characters. Now, like I mentioned in the video introducing the series, I'm limited to what I have, so I only have the first volume of The Devil Lady, and so I'm going at this review with this question in mind. Do these 5 episodes that are on this first volume make me want to watch the rest of the show? Let's start by taking a look at the intro to the series. First off, I really like the music. The heavy gothic choir and orchestra set the tone that this is a dark horror series, and some of the imagery does a good job of reinforcing that. However, the way the intro is edited bothers me. Now, I'm not just talking about the edits that ADV put in for the credits, since I have a separate set of issues for those, but rather, the overall pace of it just seems off. It shows an image, then cuts to black, and then another image. There's nothing wrong with that sequence in and of itself, but it's just that there doesn't really seem to be a clear rhythm when there should be. Some moments they hit it, but others not so much. I understand you want time for the credits to be read, but you can still accomplish that while maintaining the flow of the sequence, like so. As for the ADV edit, the whole black and blood spatter with random movement in the background, that doesn't really work for me. It just felt like they thought, oh, well, this intro doesn't have anything really exciting to really grab the audience attention, so let's just throw that in there to make it more exciting, even though I don't think this ever actually had any TV airings in the US, and we'll probably see why later. Really, the whole additions they made, it just comes across as visual clutter. Our story begins with episode 1, Beast, where we meet June Fudo, a successful fashion model. Right off the bat, we get a fake-out scare within the first minute. Why? Nothing's been established yet. What, did they think the audience would forget that this is a horror series within the first minute of the first episode? Anyway, we see June as she goes through the motions of her day, showing moderate dissatisfaction with her life as seen by this exchange with her friend Kazumi, a high school student working as a teen model. At the same time, June just can't shake the feeling that she's being followed. Just to drive the point home about June's dissatisfaction, we get this brief throwaway scene. Now, I'm bringing it up for 2 reasons. One is that the series has the tendency to do the whole words from a previous scene that are still in the main character's mind cliche, but the problem is that it uses lines of dialogue that the characters didn't actually say. I don't know if this is a translation issue or what, but how hard would it have been to have this line,
I can't wait until I can be a cool model like you are, June,
played in the previous scene? It would have made a lot more sense. But here, we basically just have a callback that isn't calling back to anything. The other reason I'm mentioning this scene is because I like the expression of this guy. I mean, after June delivers the obvious line,
there's nothing cool about it, it just is.
He just looks up with utter confusion. His face is pretty much saying, why is this woman suddenly talking to herself out loud on the subway? Is she a crazy person? Oh god. I get it now. I accidentally boarded the Exposition Express. I'm cursed to forever witness obvious exposition of main characters until the end of days. Help! Somebody help! Don't leave me in here! Later, as June is watching TV, she is suddenly visited by this thing. It appears, floats closer to the camera ominously like the intro to Majora's Mask. June shouts at it, and then it just disappears. Was it unnerving? I guess, but it was more or less confusing because I don't get why that was significant. I mean, maybe it makes sense to people who read the original Devilman manga, but really, this is only the first episode. I understand it's probably just foreshadowing of some kind, but it feels like something was missing there, like maybe some voiceover or something. Point being, I can't really comment on whether it's foreshadowing anything because, as I mentioned, I only have the first 5 episodes. After that bit of pointlessness, June is suddenly visited by the same woman she saw following her earlier, Lan Asuka. I can't stand this character, for reasons I will go into later. However, there's one big problem with this whole setup. I know that there have been successful stories that have mysterious strangers pulling the hero into an unknown world against their will, but that's usually because they have something on the main character, some sort of leverage or blackmail, or something that the main character wants. Here, Lan just shows up, says, "You're going to come with me," and June does anyway. As a viewer, we're not given any clear indication why June decides to go along with Lan Asuka. She doesn't put up any resistance of any kind. Now, a lot of people might think, oh, well, she's a very passive character. The problem is that's not how they established her in an earlier scene. Because, yeah, she's going through the motions, but if you look at this scene where a photographer that she's working with sends her manager to ask her out to dinner, she turns him down. That's not something a completely passive character that goes along with what everybody else is saying would do. And so, the idea of her just suddenly go along with this person without any clear rhyme or reason doesn't make any sense. So, do we ever get an explanation? Well, not for the first couple of episodes. Not at all. So the two of them drive to the docks, and Asuka is doing the usual annoying trope of not answering any questions and speaking very cryptically.
They say human beings have ceased to evolve. Did you know that, June? But living things that stop growing and changing and get stuck in a static state can't survive. The only way anything can continue to live in this world is to keep right on changing.
There is so much wrong with what she is saying right now, but if I were to go on a rant for every little thing that bothered me in this, we'd be here all week. June, being the sudden ragdoll, just does everything that Asuka tells her to do, which leads to her being locked in a room with a giant werewolf that proceeds to tear her to shreds. All the while, Asuka is giving her such useful advice as,
"Why are you fighting it? Let yourself go, June. You have to want to survive."
June transforms, takes down the werewolf, and glares into the camera that's been recording the whole thing. One thing I can compliment this episode on is that when June is turning back to normal, it happens really, really slowly throughout this little exchange between her and Asuka. While the dialogue itself is the same cryptic BS we heard earlier, I do have to acknowledge when the animators are willing to put that kind of attention to detail into something, as it works to imply that the transformation into a beast implies that it's almost kind of like a drug high that you have to slowly come down from. It's not like where you'll just suddenly transform to a beast and then suddenly transform back. It's a process, and I actually really liked that. As the cleanup crew takes the wolf away, they're met with a little surprise.
Something's gone off. What's happened?
As the wolf returns to kill Asuka and June, we're given this baffling line of dialogue that makes me question the entire premise of the series.
"You have betrayed your own kind by this assault."
Okay, first of all, you attacked her first. The betrayal is on you. Second, are these supposed to be demons from hell, or people that have evolved into beasts? Is this supposed to be supernatural horror, or science fiction horror? I mean, it's like they couldn't decide what kind of story they're trying to tell. And before you all comment saying, oh yeah, well, they frequently combine supernatural horror with science fiction horror in Japan. Believe me, I am well aware. But the thing is that this doesn't do it very well. It doesn't make up its mind. And let me remind you, this is not following the original manga in any way. This is telling a completely separate story. Because in the original manga, they make it very clear that these are demons from hell. They make it very clear that it's a supernatural horror series. So, I can't shake the feeling that this series was probably the victim of some sort of executive meddling. Because they don't strike a nice balance, because Shin Megami Tensei 4 strikes a nice balance, Soul Hackers strikes a nice balance, and I'm sure there's a lot of other anime series out there that manage to strike a nice balance. This one doesn't. The wolf, now bigger and badder, attacks June as Asuka is dragged away by government flunkies who are doing the sensible thing and trying to get the hell out of there. What bothers me about the scene is that they try to show that Asuka is somehow concerned for June's well-being, something that is undermined by a great deal of her actions in subsequent episodes. It's not written very well, and it feels ripped from the heavily weathered playbook of sci-fi fantasy cliches that outline that the main character is the one.
This is unexpected, Asuka. You're just going to have to start over again to find a suitable beast hunter.
That's easy for you to say! Do you know what it takes?
However, rising out of the smoke, we see the two monsters, June and the wolf, have grown giant, ending episode 1. When it comes to the series' ending theme, I don't really have that much to say. It's your usual J-pop paired with an animation that doesn't really call too much attention to itself because it's meant to have the credits placed over it. It's not a bad song by any means, it's just... it doesn't really match the tone of the overall series. But then again, this is something that's actually pretty common in a lot of anime, where you have very grim, very dark storylines that are either preceded or followed by very upbeat J-pop. I mean, the best example of this would be Neon Genesis Evangelion. Episode 2, Blood, picks up where Episode 1 ends, complete with an epic battle between the two giant monsters. With that story wrapped up, the episode actually begins with June waking up in her apartment, wondering if it all really happened until she opens the shower curtain to find the torn, bloody clothing. June takes this about as well as you would expect. Before she can kill herself by swallowing a piece of glass, her manager calls her and reminds her of a shoot she's scheduled for later that day. I actually really like this scene since it does a pretty good job of encapsulating just how messed up this all is, and how a real person might react to being forcefully turned into a bloodthirsty demon. In the evening after the shoot, June is lurking by herself when a lowly PA, production assistant for those of you who aren't really familiar with film production terms, brings her food from the craft services table. June, out of the blue, forces herself onto the PA, which naturally freaks him out. After he runs off, she's suddenly brought back to her senses and breaks down again, forcing the shoot to be cut short. Her manager naturally gets worried.
The director had to cut the shoot short.
I'm sorry.
You keep saying that, but it doesn't make it better. I told him you were sick.
Huh?
If this is too much for you, June, I can cut back your schedule.
No, it's not that, Yuasa.
Because it doesn't look like you're having any fun out there anymore. And why do it if you're miserable, June? I mean, I could get you other kinds of gigs if you'd rather. Catalogs, low-stress stuff.
No, it's fine. I don't want more changes.
Hmm?
I need this to stay just as it is right now.
Shortly after arriving at her apartment building, June once again runs into Kazumi. The two go out to dinner where Kazumi laments the fact that she's still living at home and complains about an argument she had with her parents. June offers to go with her in order to apologize. Unfortunately, the main catalyst for the series decides to rear her head.
Aren't you photogenic? Very nice.
Asuka, what are you doing here?
I told you, you and I are going to hunt.
I'll never do it.
Hey, June. Thanks for waiting. Who's your friend here? Is she also with your modeling agency?
No, I don't model, dear. Don't be ridiculous. You see, I just enjoy looking at pictures.
I'm Kazumi Takira from Office Femme. It's real nice to meet you. So, hey, are those some new pictures of you, June? Gosh, June.
Kazumi, I'm sorry. Why don't you just go home?
But I thought you and I were... You're not gonna come with me?
Keep this scene in mind for later, because I will address this when I go into my huge tirade about what my problem is with Law and Asuka as a character. The two drive to a nightclub where many of the patrons have been mutilated. Asuka throws down a Molotov cocktail to light the place up and draw out the monster of the week, which I like to call Scyther on steroids. Unlike the last episode, this battle is wrapped up pretty quickly and even ends with a quick retread of the fact that June doesn't want to do any of this, complete with the classic screaming of "No!" to the uncaring heavens above. Episode 3, Wings, puts a great deal of focus on June's friend Kazumi, as she begins to worry about June and how distant she's suddenly become, with June asking her to stop calling her out of concern for her safety, much to Kazumi's chagrin. June tries to get her mind off things by going drinking with a random guy she meets at a crosswalk, only to have Asuka come along for her usual scene, which can pretty much be summarized thusly: "You're a beast." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "Not." As she's walking home, June has a run-in with the requisite creepy child character that still sounds like an adult for some reason.
Why do you insist on murdering us, June, when we are evolving with you?
What?
Evolution is the only way mankind can hope to survive this path to destruction. You can feel it in your own blood.
I can feel it?
It's not all that difficult. You're going to understand. I'll make you understand, even if I have to kill her.
You'll kill her? Who will you kill?
Don't bother playing coy with me. It's shameless the way your blood howls. She's only a girl.
Realizing that he's referring to Kazumi, June tries to call her, but with no luck. The ringing phone prompts Kazumi's father to go into Kazumi's room, the ringing stopping before he can answer. This leads to what I guess is supposed to be a creepy moment as he reaches for Kazumi's skirt sitting on the bed, but it's cut short as the monster of the week arrives and kills him off screen. Kazumi and her mother are unaware, and June is stuck in traffic as she tries to make her way out to Kazumi's house before it's too late. The next few moments serve primarily as build-up, as Kazumi's mother is dead, but Kazumi is unaware. June is still rushing to the scene while Kazumi is unknowingly walking towards her doom. It's actually some pretty good build-up, but the tense moment where Kazumi finds out what's going on feels like a bit of a misfire. There isn't really a reveal of the monster, but they already have the intense music playing. This might have worked a little bit better if they held off on the music until they actually revealed the monster, instead of for this chase scene, because I think that would have made it a little bit more terrifying in my opinion. June arrives on the scene and spots the monster, which looks a little over-designed this time around. She transforms without a second thought. Kazumi faints from the shock, and the two beasts fight it out, the house getting destroyed in the process. After beating the monster, another one, this time a harpy, appears behind her and taunts her. This leads to fight number 2, which is just underwhelming. It tries to build up the fact that she can use wings to fly, but we already saw that she could sprout wings in the first 2 episodes, rendering this moment, and the title of the episode, entirely pointless. The episode ends with the harpy fried on the power lines and June looking down on the destruction as she becomes racked with guilt over everything that happens. Following the events of Wings, episode 4, Seed, begins with June finding herself in the Human Alliance government base under camera surveillance, leading to a moment of character development for June and what I assume is supposed to be a moment for Lan Asuka. More on that later. She meets with the person in charge of the Human Alliance base, who, along with Asuka, explains the situation.
Miss Fido, there is a sacred duty to all mankind that calls to you here. Beast manifestations have always been dealt with through cooperation from the police, but this evolution we're seeing is more than we're prepared for. These mature beasts are larger and stronger than anything we've ever seen.
To contain and exterminate them, we need your help. Do you understand?
Now, here is the thought that I had when I was watching this episode. Why didn't they have this in episode 2? Why did they wait until after 2 or 3 major beast attacks to actually bring June in and explain everything that is going on, as well as give her a reason to actually disappear suddenly, as well as smooth things over with the companies she is working for, especially since they're trying to keep this thing freaking discreet? This just doesn't make any sense from a story perspective, or even in terms of basic logic. You'd think it would make more sense for the Human Alliance to bring in the person who's supposed to be their beast hunter in as soon as possible, especially when you consider the fact that the Beastman transformation is probably a very traumatic experience for someone who isn't prepared for it and hasn't really accepted the fact that they are a Beastman or a Devilman or what have you. It just makes no sense. Why did you wait until after these 3 attacks happened. Why didn't you bring her in immediately after the first attack? We cut to an office building where we find 2 office workers in the throes of a late-night fling. The young woman alluded to being a beast. Meanwhile, June returns home to find Kazumi waiting outside of her apartment. Cutting back, we see the male office worker be a dick to the woman and get TM86'd for his trouble. Back at June's, Kazumi laments the fact that she wanted to move out on her own, but now realizes just how much she misses her parents. June tries to console her, but is called away to respond to a beast attack. This time by an actual phone call that actually tells her when to be ready. June heads down and is picked up by Asuka's secretary Maeda, who fills her in on the details. They arrive on scene and both June and Asuka go into the office building. They reach the plant creature on the 7th floor, June quickly transforming and effectively blowing it up with one blast, ending the episode. Episode 5, Shark, gives us a little more insight into June's past as she has to come face to face with Aoi Kurosaki, a classmate at June's high school whose competitive swimming ambitions were cut short by a hip injury. The Human Alliance discovers that Aoi has the Beast gene and sends June to investigate in person. As the two reminisce, the scene alludes to a past history the two shared, implying something that happened that destroyed the friendship. June returns to the fitness center the following evening under surveillance by Asuka and Maeda. She confronts Aoi, who knew she would be coming back, leading to a flashback where it's revealed that back in high school, Aoi forced herself upon June, who shoved her back in a panic, causing the aforementioned hip injury. The confrontation gets more heated, causing Aoi to transform. She blames her transformation on June and goes in to attack her, prompting June to transform in retaliation. The ensuing fight spills into the sewers as June is then made to transform into the more demonic form that we saw back in episode 1, June dealing the finishing blow off screen. In the aftermath, June reflects as she holds the last shred of Aoi's humanity. The episode ends with June sitting in her apartment with some wine. Kazumi wakes up and tries talking to June, leading to June to walk up and hug her as she cries, leading to an animation choice that I feel was unnecessary.
Hey, June.
I'm sorry. Please, just hold me. And let me hold you. I want you to know, no matter what happens, that I care for you. There was someone I knew once who needed me. Oh, I couldn't say that to.
There's nothing wrong with the line itself, because it shows that June cared for Aoi as a friend, but were the blushies really necessary? The facial expression was more than enough to communicate the sense of shock, but the added blush just clashes with the colors of the rest of the scene, not to mention needlessly forcing the lesbian subtext for Kazumi and June when the scene worked just fine by itself. So those were the first 5 episodes of The Devil Lady. Do they make me want to check out the rest of the series? Well, not really. However, there are some things I liked about these episodes. First of all, the animation is pretty good. It's nice and fluid, and I like the more subtler aspects of June's transformations both to and from her beast form. Speaking of which, I also like June as a character. She works as your typical everyman that's forced into a bad situation, much like Dr. Banner or Lawrence Talbot. I also like the fact that we see the toll it takes on her throughout the episodes, as it allows for some pretty good character moments. However, the main gripe I have with these episodes and the premise of the series is the fact that Lan Asuka is so pivotal to the plot. She's just not written very well, even in the latter episodes on this DVD. All she does is speak cryptically and generally be creepy. All of her dialogue either ranges from alluding to something the audience is supposed to know about already, or constantly telling June to let the beast out in a fashion that even Emperor Palpatine would roll his eyes at. The biggest thing that frustrates me is, once again, we have no idea what kind of power she has over June. She just appears to make June's life more miserable, giving more reasons why June shouldn't be following her in any way. Even in the very first episode, they established that June isn't the kind of person to just go along with something, so it can't really be argued that June is a passive character and would just go along with what Asuka is telling her to do without questioning it. What doesn't help is the fact that for someone who wants to keep the appearance of beasts a secret from the public, Asuka has no problem with following June into public places in order to bring her on a beast hunt without giving June a way to leave discreetly, or even a good enough alibi to explain why she has to leave so suddenly. For someone who's supposedly fighting for the human race, she has no problem with smacking random people around and more than readily refers to dead bodies as clutter, not to mention that the fact that most of her dialogue indicates that she doesn't think very highly of humans to begin with, meaning that she doesn't have a reason to be fighting with the Human Alliance at all. There's having a little mystery about the motivations of a character, but when you don't give enough explanation beyond a brief throwaway line as to why the main character is listening to them, that's not good storytelling. Now, I know that Asuka turns out to be some sort of grand mastermind that's trying to put some sort of global domination plan into effect, but this series forgets that if you're going to have that be a plot twist, if you're going to have that be a reveal, you need to have that character build trust with the main character, and by extension, the audience, before you pull the rug out from under them. For a good example of this, look at Ex Machina, or Bravely Default. With the Devil Lady, it's like you've walked into a room and you already see someone bending down, grabbing the rug, just waiting to pull it. You already know it's coming, and so you don't really have any reason to get invested or really care. Overall, this has some good ideas, but not enough to make me want to hunt down the rest of the series. From what I've researched, the original manga sounds a bit more promising, mainly because it's a straightforward occult series instead of trying to pass off as science fiction. However, no company has licensed any of Go Nagai's series for publication here in the US, so I wouldn't really be able to tell you for certain. This is definitely not the kind of note I wanted to start out on for this show, because I don't want this to be one of those shows that looks at a bunch of the bad stuff. I want this to be a show where we look at interesting stuff, stuff that I think is worth talking about, stuff that you either have heard of or might not have heard of, stuff that maybe it'll pull out something you may not have known about, some classic stuff. I don't want this to be like all the other knockoffs of stuff like the Nostalgia Critic or Anime Abandoned. I mean, I already rip off the Nostalgia Critic from Monster Clash. I don't want to take any more from the playbook. So, yeah. Good ideas, but the story problems just make it not really worth watching, at least to me. If you like the series, that's fine. But these episodes didn't win me over. So, let's go to the shelf and see if we can find something a little bit more interesting. Alright, what do we got here? Now here's a good one. Join me as we take a look at a piece of 80s science fiction that you might not have known about, next time on From the Shelf.